Rightio, welcome along to a podcast of maximum production for the Holstein Friesians, and it's my absolute pleasure this evening to welcome along Brett Fitzhenry, the Business Development Manager for Rumen for Trail Nutrition, and also Eile van der Gaast from the Netherlands. I'll give you a little bit of a background on Brett, and then here I'll pass it over to him and he can introduce Eile. So Brett grew up in South Africa, we won't hold that against him, and he studied BSc in agriculture as well as MSc in animal science. Brett's been living in New Zealand since 2016. He worked on a dairy farm, spent 8 years in the dairy genetics industry, and been in animal nutrition for the last 2.5 years. His role for Trail Nutrition covers ruminants across Australia and New Zealand. Outside his busy work life, he enjoys the outdoor activities. I'm sure he's now an All Black supporter. And just thoroughly enjoys New Zealand, I guess. And, first of all, we'd like to say to Trail Nutrition, we really thank you for becoming partners in this podcast this evening, but also we thank you for your sponsorship of the main sponsor of the naming rights to our Holstein Friesian conference, which is coming up at the end of June, which I'm sure you're going to be there, Brett. So thank you very much on behalf of the Holstein Friesians and to Trail Nutrition and your two learned gentlemen for your time this evening. I'll let you to take over now, Brett, and you can introduce Eile from the Netherlands and anything else you wanted to do. But tonight it's the big importance is a new era in milk replacement, the SprayFo. So, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you, Selwyn, and appreciate you not holding my background against me. And yes, you're right. I am actually a avid All Black supporter. So hopefully there's some good results for us this coming season. But yes, back on to why we're here this evening. A pleasure being obviously part of Holstein Friesian New Zealand. It is the first time we are sponsoring them, and we look forward to contributing to the success of everybody's calf rearing. We all know that every successful herd relies on a good sound foundation. So we're hoping to be able to support that. And as you've mentioned, you've given me a fairly decent, a fairly extended introduction. Eile is one of my colleagues who is based in the Netherlands. He has got a wealth of knowledge around not only the history of Trail Nutrition and SprayFo, but he's also been very involved in various research and development and that sort of thing. But I'll give Eile a quick minute to just further introduce himself, and then we can get into it.
Okay. So thanks for the invite to this podcast, Selwyn and Kelly, and Brett for the introduction. My name is Eile van der Gaast. I work for Trail Nutrition almost 40 years. It sounds a bit weird telling it like this. But all my life I've been in animal nutrition, first in horse feeding and then in animal health products, and the last 15 years in calves rearing. When I'm out, I like photography, running and biking, so I'm also an outdoor type, try to stay healthy at least. What was interesting when the introduction from you, Selwyn, I liked because you mentioned we want to talk about a new era in calf milk replacer. I would like to correct that a little bit, because when I started my job, I experienced that around the world calves were nurtured not in the right way, which means very restricted. And calves have been for decades one of the few animals which have been reared restrictive in early life. And we started basically a new era in calf rearing, where of course our product and our protocols and everything we advise around it is key. But I want to have very clear that we talk about a new era in calf rearing, and the goal of that new era of calf rearing is to exploit the full genetic potential of the calf. Because Trail Nutrition is a company with a very long background in animal nutrition. And SprayFo is a brand of milk replacer with close to 70 years of heritage in production. But that all thrives if you also have a good, solid vision about where you want to go with it. And our goal is to exploit new ways of calf rearing, to increase, basically to substantiate that new era of calf rearing, and to use all means, all what we have available to let calves use the genetic potential that they have. And what makes us special in that sense is that we not only produce the product, but we do our own in-house research. We have done a lot of calf trials. We have done longevity trials on our dairy farm. So basically our goal is to really drive that space to own that space, and as a global player and also a global leader in this field, basically pave the road for further development of this category of basically pave the road for better calf rearing, and on the backside of that come with our own products.
Yeah, I guess it's very important because the cost of rearing, and now that our genetics are getting better and better all the time, like it's superseding with genomics, etc. So you're getting the best genetics born. You want to give them the very best start in life, don't you? And so by that, you need to do it from day one, is how that animal's going to grow and go into the herd and produce to its maximum and full potential. So that's where your company, guys that you represent, is very much focused on, isn't it?
Yes. And what's also interesting is that you can look at it, because I'm now looking at you in kind of like windows, and what this whole calf rearing is a window of huge opportunity. And what you mentioned earlier, Selwyn, in the past it was much approached from a cost perspective, because yeah, of course, with milks being expensive, there is cost involved. But if you look to the development of the animal, it's a window of opportunity, because in the first 2 months of life, all the basic organs are developed. And so the organ development is 3-4 times higher than in later stages of life. So if you pass that, if you miss that opportunity, you don't get a second chance on it. So our whole research and also our procedures are directed to maximize the use of that window of opportunity.
And then I think just to add to that, Eile, with organs and all that early physiological development happening is, I guess, the first step in that animal then obviously achieving its genetic potential as well, right? So that comes back into those genes being able to be expressed, because those organs are then able to really perform at the levels and perform the processes and systems that they need to do to produce a high performing animal down the track as well.
So we're quite unique in New Zealand. I would say 75 to 80% of our farmers calve in a short window. So you're getting a lot of fresh calf cows. In the big herds, they might get 70 to 100, even more plus cows dropped overnight. And so it's very important for them to get that early start, isn't it? So just tell us, the listeners, about your products and about your product at SprayFo, and just, where does that fit in our farming system?
So I think just to take a few steps back, it might help just to put a few things in context. So we've mentioned obviously trial nutrition. Trial nutrition is built on 4 pillars. Basically, we've got SprayFo, which is a milk replacer brand. There's research that we do. There's a feed additive pillar, and then feed analysis and testing. So SprayFo is the brand of milk replacers that we manufacture. But coming to, I guess, New Zealand specifically in the height of calving, there's obviously a lot of things that are happening in some very trying conditions quite often. There's obviously the objective to try and get calves to get not only the volumes that they require early on, but also the nutritional profile. So from being very specifically formulated product and a consistently manufactured product, that does alleviate a lot of stress and pressure and potential mishaps in that early rearing phase, where you're trying to get the animals to really get on top of early nutrition, get volumes into them, and so that they can really get themselves set up, build up energy reserves and that sort of thing. So as soon as they start building up those energy reserves, it brings into obviously their immunity, resilience, digestion, and that sort of thing. And we all know, because we are socially housing calves, there's a fair bit of animal density, and with that brings, I guess, increased levels of health risks and that sort of thing. So if you've got animals that are a bit more resilient, robust, and built up a bit of an energy reserve, they're that much stronger to combat those sorts of pressures. But then also with those early numbers, real big, I guess, concentrated numbers of calves coming in early, it's also the objective of every calf rearer to try and get those animals growing and gaining weight as quickly as possible, so that you can get them outside, you can get them on meal, and you can get them weaned as well. So we really advocate for pushing those weaning weights and that sort of thing, really looking at that quite carefully. But also, if you've got an animal that is getting a good, well-formulated, digestible product, you're getting them that to those weights earlier and getting them out the shed a bit earlier as well. And yeah, maybe Eile has some comments around that as well.
My addition to this is also coming a bit back to the question Selwyn asked, where does CMR fit into the system? Then it's also good a bit to share a bit of history where we come from, because the product, of course, is produced in the Netherlands. And here we have all-season calving pattern, so it's not as dense and peaking as in New Zealand. But where does CMR fit into the system is, for where we have started it from, is basically to use a lot of byproducts coming back from the milk processing industry. So calf milk replacer is a system built to increase the maximum use of milk solids. If you produce cheese the way we use for a milk replacer, if you cream off the milk, you have skim milk, we use it for a milk replacer. And in our products, 65 to 70, a bit depending the formula, is simply a byproduct from milk processing. So that's where the system of a milk replacer in general comes in. And what we have developed over the years is especially looking at how can we improve the total rearing system on a farm. Because especially if you look to New Zealand with this high, with a peak in calving, tens or hundreds of calves a day born, then it's extremely important to have a clear protocol managing your rearing, which means the feeding of colostrum, the application of the transition milk, and then also the steps after that. Because if you manage that right, if you feed enough energy and enough immunoglobulins and resistance in the calf, that's a solid base where calves can thrive on, and that can simply bring you to the level of success every farmer is looking for. But for Europe, the initial thought was we have to use as much byproducts from the cheese industry. And that's also why it was low in fat and high in lactose. Where we now have moved over the years is to more balanced milk replacer, which more resemble the typical nutritional profile of cow's milk, but then simply to nourish calf better and to simply make them the best replacement heifers after that. And for that, we have a research farm in Boxmeer where we have an automatic feeding system, bucket feeding system for calves. So there we do our own research on raw materials, on nutrient profiles and so forth. And also next to that, last year we have also opened a new dairy farm for dairy research. That's a 100 cow farm. I think for New Zealand standards it's a bit of a small one, but for Netherlands it's an average farm. But there we have full automated feeding where we not only monitor the dry feed intake, not only the compound feed intake, but also the roughage intake and everything, and which we then also use 100% for research purposes.
Can you, there's a lot of farmers in New Zealand that'll start off with using their colostrum and then their fresh cows for their milk. They're not taking out of their vat to send to the milk processors. But, when you get further down the track, you haven't got those freshly calved cows. So are you able to, and a lot of people do in New Zealand, add milk powder in then? So is there your product, SprayFo, is exactly the same? It can be added to whole milk?
Yes, 100%. I think that is a procedure. What I think is important in that procedure is that you monitor the total solids you feed. There's very cheap and simple tools like an optical refractometer, where you can basically check whether the solids is around 13 or 14%. And if you monitor that correct, and if you collect the transition milk in the right way, it can be applied very efficiently, and also till a certain extent, whether it's then 70-30 or 30-70, within that spectrum, also the changes can be made by the farmer only when they monitor the total solids by a refractometer in the right way.
I think just to add to that quickly, Owen, just for, I guess, putting clear application or context to that in the New Zealand industry. So there's obviously that's quite a delicate phase because you've got that transition milk, which is quite high in solids, it's quite high in fat as well. So there's actually one of the, I guess, the premium product on the New Zealand market is the SprayFo Delta product, which is higher in fat than in protein, which actually it really complements that transition milk transition to calf milk replacer as well. And just being a very similar profile to cow's milk really sort of supports the ease of transition from transition milk onto calf milk replacer. So it's a real smooth changeover, and also allows, if you have today of your 60% transition milk and 40% calf milk powder, the next day you might have the ratio switched around. Because of that nutrient profile, it really does, it supports the health and digestibility of the calf as well.
So, with your trials and that over in the Netherlands and things, what are the biggest changes that you've seen in the last 5 or 6 years, say, to where you are now with this product? What has been the drive? You're wanting to get healthy calves weaned quicker. What have you, tinkered around with or your scientists and your research? What has actually been the driver of the last 5 or 6 years?
The driver over the last 5, 6 years has been basically the development after weaning. And what we have seen, because we have already started intensive feeding procedures like 10, 15 years ago here in Europe, and it's now moving into other territories. But what you then see when you feed milk intensively, then at some point the dry feed intake becomes a bit like a limiting factor. And if you then wean them too quickly, you have a huge weaning depression afterward, which is really harmful to the calf. What we have now found out in the last few years is it's important that you move the profile of the milk replacer, let's say, to a more balanced fat to protein ratio, so higher fat than protein, as what Brett already said about SprayFo Delta, which we have in New Zealand as well. And then also, and not particularly to focus at early weaning, but to start weaning at the right moment, let's say after 6 or 7 or 8 weeks, and then take long enough time to build off the milk to not have a growth depression when you wean the calf, but a growth acceleration when you wean the calves. And if you're able to achieve that, you have amazing development and body weights at 3 or 4 months, and those are the base for start breeding at 12 or 13 months. So that is and that is where we are. That is one of the outcomes of our latest research, and that's also what we highly advocate in our latest protocols.
I think to add to that, Eile, there's also been an extensive look at the levels of lactose as energy source, and I think it comes back to that fat conversation, using fat as the energy source. It's a real high density energy source, and it provides the calf with a longer lasting source of energy as well, and that they can mobilize real efficiently as well. I think we're just starting, Eile, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we're just starting to look at the long-term impact of high lactose levels early in life, and what that might mean as far as metabolic concerns or issues down the track as well.
So obviously you're exporting to a lot of countries. Obviously they've come on with your research and Trail Nutrition's obviously exporting worldwide.
Yes, basically we started with SprayFo. We started exporting in 1984. Because then we had the quota system here coming up in use. So the growth in Netherlands was more or less like restricted. And then the company decided to move out. SprayFo as a brand is taken over by Trail Nutrition in 2006. And after 2006, we could benefit from, let's say, all the channels and all the countries where Trail Nutrition is active in. And currently we sell SprayFo in around 50 countries around the world. So that goes from, of course, all over Europe, into Latin America, into Africa, into the Middle East, into Asia, and up to New Zealand.
Because I know last season you might have come across this as well, that the milk powder, especially for the bull calf rearers and the beef rearers, was very hard to source. And I guess you've got good supply to New Zealand.
So that's a good point, Selwyn, and it is something that we look to manage as carefully as possible internally with our distributor Maxim Animal Nutrition. So that's who we're currently distributing through is Maxim Animal Nutrition. Look, there's a real strong encouragement from our point of view to get in touch with us as early as possible around any potential volume requirements and that sort of thing, so that we can secure that and allocate it accordingly. So last year, I think pretty much everybody saw a bit of a struggle sourcing product, but when you start working with an imported product, that is something that we look at it a bit more carefully, and we obviously can't turn around tomorrow and ask Eile and the team to get some powder to us next week. It's not that easy. Yeah, it's the early commitment is something, or those early conversations really do help with, I guess, the nuances of working with an imported product. But being an imported product has its obviously unique aspects of the strict quality regulations that they have to adhere to in the Netherlands, and then obviously the very careful manufacturing process that the products go through.
Is the product easy to mix? Because sometimes milk replaces a devil of a thing to mix, and there is more and more robotic calf feeding now in New Zealand. So where does your product fit within those two things? Some have the cafeteria in the calf shed, then goes out behind a trailer, and the calves are fed in the paddock. And I know mixing times can be, some has to have hot water to a certain degree or cooler water or whatever. So just tell me a little bit about the mixing process of spray foam.
Kijk, on that one, we have already a long history with the major producers of automatic feeder system, as being Förster and Holmelauer and Urban, from typically all from Germany. I don't know why that is, but there is also local systems, but they are not as global as those three. But we have worked a lot together with them, let's say, on the flowing characteristics and on the mixability of our products. Because for that, what is very critical for the milk replacer is the homogenization of the fat. So how the fat is protected in the milk replacer. Because if not, then it becomes a bit like sticky, and especially in automatic feeder, then it becomes a disaster. But our homogenization process is, we only make milk replacers, so it's specially tuned for this type of product. And that means so we have very small fat particles covered by dairy, so by lactose and protein. We have also, after then, when mixing the final product, we also take measures to guarantee easy solubility of, so the wettability and solubility of our products. And if I look to New Zealand in particular, there the majority with SprayFo Delta is higher fat, but especially with SprayFo Vitesse or Blue, those have a bit of lower fat and are more whey-based products, and they are very easy dissolvable, even cold soluble if needed. But for a Delta is not cold soluble, but is very well applicable in automatic feeders. And also for mixing systems, and also with the fat homogenization, you don't need water at higher temperature than 45 or 50 degrees. So in the old days, especially in Netherlands with veal calves, then you needed 60 or 70 degrees of water to make a good solution of the milk replacer. Those days are gone. It's very easy soluble and completely applicable in an automatic feeding system.
Just to once again add to that, so from some of the local experiences we've had here, Selwyn, it won't often be the case. I'll just correct Eile with some of the experiences that have been had over here. We have got SprayFo users that are mixing SprayFo Delta cold very effectively. So it's a case of being very versatile then in any sort of ad lib system, because obviously if you are using a bit more of a low-key infrastructure ad lib system where you've got a 200-liter drum or something like that you've got your teats with pipes going down to the bottom, you're mixing a fair 30, 40, 50 liters at a time, and that hangs around. So being cold mix is really important because you don't want to be making cheese or anything like that. So it lends itself really well to mixing cold, mixing quickly, and prevents any clumps as well. And we all know that preventing clumps is real key in calf health and calf digestibility as well. I've actually, some of the experiences that I've had with new users of SprayFo is be careful of over mixing, because a lot of the time they can be used to spending a bit of time really, getting stuck into the drill and getting into the milk replacer, where we kind of have to warn against that and say, hey, look, after 30 to 45 seconds of mixing, everything should be good.
Are you adding some vitamins into the SprayFo as well?
That's a very interesting question, Selwyn, because you asked just before what we have seen over the last year, how things develop. And if you then look back to formulations with SprayFo or even other products of 10, 15 or 20 years ago, or 23 years ago, there was no regulation on vitamin A in Europe. So things went up very high, like in Italy, 60, 70,000 units of vitamin A. That has been restricted to 25,000, I think, 10 years ago. But what we currently see also in milk replacers, we try to not overdose vitamins and also trace minerals in milk replacer, and especially trace minerals like copper and iron. If you apply them in sulfate form and in a higher level, they drive bacteria development in the gut of the calf. So they are nutritionally needed, but when overdosed, they have a very negative effect. And what we have done with that over the last 5 years is we moved completely from sulfate-based trace minerals to organic trace minerals. So they are not acting like a free radical or whatever. They are bound and they are absorbed in the system where needed. And also the vitamin levels are a bit, let's say, balanced to what the calf needs. So we add them, definitely, but in a quality source and at a level based on the real needs of the calf.
Interesting, very interesting. So the transitioning period, like we said before, when they're going off milk onto grass or whatever, but you would see no transitioning problems with going whole milk onto SprayFo at all.
No, I don't see any problem. One of my simple thoughts on that is, as long as the process is thought through and monitored, I think it can work. But if you mix without thought and it deviates in dry matter content or in fat to protein ratio, then you will of course have a negative impact on the calf. But if you manage the dry matter amount, and also if you manage a bit the balance between a milk replacer and a transition milk, then I don't see any problems.
So, just another comment on that is also then looking at, we never going to say that a SprayFo or milk replacer is the silver bullet to all calf rearing solutions, right? So it's also a case of looking at, well, all the other factors of the environment, what, from a weaning perspective, what meal are they going on to? Have they had exposure to that meal for long enough? And that, I guess, real sort of gradual, we'll support a gradual weaning process, just so that you can really allow the calf to adjust from changing from a liquid diet to a more solid diet as well. And then ensuring that your water that you're using is clean and healthy for the calf, and that the environment is suitable for the calf to develop as naturally as possible. Because coming back to, some of the principles of something like SprayFo Delta, we're looking at the cornerstones of nature. Nature's higher in fat than protein, allowing that calf to develop as naturally as possible. So giving it the environment, the resources, the situation to also then go through that process with all other aspects covered as well.
So let's move forward to the future then. Where are we heading? 6 years we discovered doing things differently.
What I see for the future, and I think part of that is already happening at least the last year, is we see complete change of spectrum of the value of the animal. What we see in Europe and also now in US, we are not very active in US, but we have a very good connection with US. You see a very high price of young stock. So we see a lot of motivation. Farmers are basically now it's not a voluntary thing anymore to take good care of your animals, because they have become so valuable that you need to nurture them. And it's not a voluntary anymore to exploit their genetic potential. It's a must, because if you don't, then at the long run you will not stay in business. And that's what at least we from a company perspective see also. That's where we have to help farmers in tightening up their procedures, also work towards maybe more clear monitoring. We are looking on new additives to better control the health situation of the animals, so have less sick animals, less back layers, simply to have an overall more robust, solid animal, which provides robustness and productivity for the future.
Because now methane's so important, the emissions, etc. All these things are now becoming just, farming's changing. I wouldn't say daily, but yearly it's changing the requirements, the environment and things. Obviously, Trail Nutrition has very much invested in that sort of new things that are available and moving forward. Is that correct, Brett, in that sense?
Absolutely, a sustainability aspect to this as well. I guess with good nutrition comes less losses on farm, and that obviously has its sustainability impact. And then there's obviously the mental well-being of rearers and that sort of thing. So it's that mental health sustainability as well. You could look at it, but also, yeah, I think coming back to environmental, the large, big picture situations, there's absolutely awareness and opportunities for exploitation around that as well. But I think back to your point of where to from here, what some of the other aspects of the future might look like, and Eile can once again correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's also just the precision of calf nutrition as well. So looking at those real macronutrient profiles and how we have been doing it compared to how we can do it going forward. So I think there's a real strong focus at looking at the higher fat levels of calf nutrition and the ratio and relationship between your fat, protein, lactose, and obviously the contribution of the vitamins and minerals really more precisely.
Well, we've touched a fair bit tonight. Anything before we wrap the session up? You've brought forward this idea and the sponsorship. I didn't know a lot about trowel nutrition, but where do we find you? Our members are going to be listening to this. What's the best way to engage and to look more for themselves into this product, but other products that you may have available in New Zealand?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for that, Selwyn. The SprayFo product has been available in New Zealand for the past 15 to 17 years. However, we really sort of need to find a bit more of a footprint in the calf space. So if you want to connect, find out a bit more about the product, we have got a Facebook page, SprayFo NZ. We've got a website, a New Zealand-based website as well, www.sprayfo.nz. And by all means, you're more than welcome to follow some of those contact details on the website, or like I say, Facebook page is very well monitored. So inquiries that do go through there are attended to. We've obviously got our distributor Maximum Animal Nutrition as well. So there's a new distribution agreement. So we're working through really getting them up and going, and we look forward to what that looks like in the future. But then, from a sponsorship point of view as well, we really looking forward to connecting with more of the Holstein Friesian New Zealand members as well. And look forward to connecting at the conference, but then also we see opportunities to hopefully get in touch and share some of the research projects that we've been doing as well, and really make that information available, because over the last 10 or 12 years, Eile and the team have really invested heavily, and if we can bring some of those research results closer and share them with some of the members, that'd be great.
Yeah, I guess the big thing is always seeing is believing. So I guess if you had some farmers out there using it, and maybe we could entice a field day or something like that in regional capacities, so that would just reinforce what you're telling us, and farmers can then make up their mind. But from what I'm hearing and doing a bit of research behind the scenes as well, it looks pretty awesome sort of product in the way forward. And I love the way that you guys are changing and using the byproduct for the milk replacer. It's not lost in the system, it's not washed down the drain or whatever, but also the animal is paramount and important. So that's what you're focusing on. And we have these high priced or high indexed animals, high genetic animals in New Zealand, like we're all around the world. And if we don't give them the best start in life, we're basically behind the eight ball, and we've got to get them in calf to the bull in that 13, 14 months. So I believe your product is certainly very beneficial. And I guess, Al, if anyone wanted to drop you an email from New Zealand, I know we've got quite a few Dutch farmers that follow us. I'm sure that you'd be able to be quite welcoming to get an email or two, just any questions they had for you in your capacity with the company.
Absolutely. Eile is absolutely a resource that is available to whoever who might have questions. We can absolutely contact them. I know he is on LinkedIn as far as social media goes. Hopefully you don't mind me sharing that, Eile. That is absolutely a resource that we can assist and provide farmers with.
Okay, awesome. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap this up?
I think in summary, from our point of view, we've touched on it briefly, but I think the objective that we're trying to achieve largely as a company, we've touched on a few things, but also just giving calves the opportunity to grow, develop naturally as possible is the key aspect of the philosophy of what we're trying to achieve. And that's where a lot of the objectives behind our research goes is, well, how does the diet affect metabolism? How does that metabolism affect the animal, not only today, but in the long term?
And for me to summarize, we start about that new era of calf rearing, and I hope that we have made clear also to the audience that what is good for the calf ends up in being good for the cow and also good for the farmer. So that's how we try to play a role in this whole ecosystem of dairy farm.
Well, on behalf of Holstein Friesian New Zealand, we'd just like to thank you again, guys, for your very, very knowledgeable insights. I've thoroughly enjoyed it, actually. It's been great to we've always had one, but it's good we've had two of you because we've been able to bounce ideas off each other or ask questions to one another. I think it's been really good. Again, on behalf of the Holstein Friesian Association, we would like you to just pass on to your powers to be, Brett. Thank you very much for the sponsorship. We hope it's a continual, ongoing thing. It's beneficial for us as an organisation, but also to Trail Nutrition and to you based in New Zealand. And I hope the Netherlands is going to have a nice spring coming and you grow lots of grass and things go well.
Thanks for that, Selwyn.
Thanks, guys. We'll wrap it up. Yep. So that's Selwyn Donald here for Holstein Friesian New Zealand, and that's our maximum production podcast on trail nutrition here, and SprayFo is the product that we're focused on this evening. So happy farming, and we'll be back again next month with a new topic and some new guests on our show. So that's from me, over and out.